today we're talking to Rintu Basu. Rintu accidentally wrote a best-selling, critically acclaimed book on using NLP and hypnotically persuasive language in everyday life. And today he's going to tell us how he did that and how you can accidentally create results that are far more than just your goals. And I've got to tell you, I have been so looking forward to speaking to Rintu. It's been ages since we've spoken. Rintu, tell us about your accidental bestseller and how you did it.
Okay, so the book is called The Persuasion Skills Black Book, and it genuinely was an accident, so much so that it was 6 months after I'd written the book that it took my mate to tell me that I'd written a book before I'd actually realised I'd done it.
Explain that. Tell us more about that.
Okay, so here's how it happened. I'd just put up a website for the NLP company, and what we wanted to do was attract people to it and actually sign up. The traditional way of getting people to sign up onto an email list or anything like that is you offer them something that's of some kind of value. So I went for ages trying to figure out something that I could offer NLP practitioners, master practitioners, and even people that knew nothing about NLP but were just coming to have a search for stuff, what I could offer them that might be of some use to them. The thought process I went through was kind of like, well, me as a guy that's done an awful lot of NLP, what was the thing that I struggled with the most? What was the thing that other people struggled with the most? What could I do to help them? And I actually have it personally. I didn't struggle with the language end. I loved it. I loved it from beginning to end. I thought it was great. But actually, being steeped in the market, I knew that that's the one thing that, if you like, most people entering into the field struggle with. Lots of trainers complain about how to deliver it, and there's a lack of clarity and understanding over it. So I went, well, actually, that to me is the ideal thing. I'm going to write a 10-week course and give it away for free. So a 10-week course that is all just about how to use NLP language. Okay?
Can I just pause you there a second? You gave away 10 weeks of really valuable content for free, but you're not afraid of doing that people just take your information, steal it. What were you thinking at the time?
Right. I have a kind of different mentality to a lot of trainers, actually. It's probably because I come from a commercial background where I was working in a company as a trainer. And what that kind of meant was that my responsibility is to give people the stuff that they need to enable them to do their jobs. So I didn't have the luxury of being able to say, yes, the answer to that is on my, is on the next course, which is going to cost you another $100 to get hold of. My job was to actually give them the information. So my tendency is to give people what they want. So my natural instinct is, it has always been, if you ask me how to do X, Y, Z, I will tell you rather than direct you to a course. That's one side of it. The other side of it is I have a tendency to think that I'm naturally creative. So my solution to the idea that I've given away, the best parts of a course is actually it's not an issue. I'll create another one. There's more problems to solve. There's more things to do. So I don't mind giving away material. The other side of this is I also have an idea that different mediums and different ways, you learn things in different mediums and different ways. So I was quite happy at the time to give away a lot of information on the basis that it's not all the information. I know it isn't, and people are going to, if it's good enough, people are going to come back for more of it. When I did realise I'd written a book, I did have an issue about, well, once the book's out there, then what do I do next?
Okay.
But the reality of it, there's a step before that. Once we'd done the 10-week course, and 6 months later I'd realised I'd written a book, and then we packaged it together, and I initially published it. Then I found you and Joe, and we published it properly, and that sort of. I was actually really concerned about whether people would buy it, because it's on the website for free. We got around that quite easily, because we just added a bit, some more to it, and we added some more value to it. But the reality was, all the people on the list were the first people to buy the book. There was something a lot more tangible and immediate about it, and it wasn't piecemeal in little bits of of website and stuff, and they had ownership of it. So what I hadn't realised was that people would buy it anyway. Even people that had got it in that respect.
I love this idea that the difference between a cognitive, a thing that's on your computer versus a thing that's in your hands, the difference between something that you can see and hear. So all these different methods of delivering information, people are different, and some of those people wanted it in different modes. So not only did they want it in their mode, they actually wanted it in other modes that perhaps you didn't think they wanted. I love that idea. So that I call that recycling or upcycling or reusing. So once you've created something, don't think that that's the end of that creation process. Talk to us more about that, because that's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it at the moment, because there's I've written volumes and volumes of material, just articles on this, that, and the other, and I'm looking at the moment of taking all of that and repositioning it in all sorts of different directions. The reality of it is that I originally created all of that material, firstly for getting prominence on the website, for search engine optimization, keywords, and all that technical stuff. It was written for that, but it also has to be readable, and it also has to be accessible, and it also has to give the readers something. So it's all really valuable content in that respect. So why not strip all of that, strip all the technicalities out, and create it as a book, or other free giveaways or bonuses to courses? And there's repositioning all of that material is really kind of valuable. The good thing for me is, and I think this is important really, is like it's about playing to your strengths. I'm a creator. I am much better with, if you like, a blank piece of paper and writing something again, rather than taking something that I've already done and trying to find different ways of actually using it. That to me is, it's not difficult, but it's not what I do, if that makes sense. It's not my strength. So my intention is to get all of that stuff and give it to someone else and say, look, there it all is. Reposition it, repurpose it, smooth it over so that it makes a sensible book or whatever. Because where I am with it is like, if I would be faster and more efficient if I just took it all and rewrote it, which obviously doesn't make any sense because it's already there, Yeah. Whereas giving the material to someone else and getting them to do it would make a lot of sense. Yeah.
I want to pause you. Sorry, I'm so
yeah.
bossy. I've got 2 points I want to bring up there, because there were 2 things that are really important. One is, I'm a creator. Taking on that mantle of I'm a creator, or I'm an author, or I'm a writer. Is that a different mindset to I am creating, or I'm doing a bit of creation, or I'm doing a bit of writing? Is it different for you?
Yes, absolutely. Totally. For me, there's a hierarchy of stuff going on. Okay. I can do things. I can drive a car. I can do the shopping. I can do the cooking. Okay. That's wildly different to saying I'm a cook or I'm a driver. Identity level stuff. For me, it's the difference is, when you make something your identity, you cannot help but perform behavior in that identity, if that makes sense. So I have an identity about being a trainer, for example. So my natural instinct is to go and be able to deconstruct what people are doing and then put it back together again to teach someone else to do that. That's what I do. And I can't not do that.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same about the whole linguistic element. I mean, when I first found NLP, I fell in love with the whole language and linguistic element of it. And at the time, I was doing language, you know,
Yeah,
which is, but how I am now is like it's just a part of me. I cannot not do language, you know.
yeah.
So yes, it really makes a fundamental difference.
And for you, was there a was there like a crossover period? So you were training and then you were a trainer. Was there a crossover? Did you notice a change where you were creative and then you were a creator? Was there a noticeable change?
In terms of training, yes, there was, but it actually happened. The idea of becoming of that statement, "I am a trainer," happened a lot earlier than I actually had the skills to be a trainer.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I think actually that's actually kind of self-fulfilling in all of this. And I would recommend and suggest this to everyone: is that make the statement even if you don't believe it yet, or you don't think that you have the skills yet, because it's what will drive you to get the skills. You know,
Yeah,
um, the if you turn around and say, "I am training," okay, it's not necessarily a driver to be a better trainer. It's not necessarily a driver to get the skills. You're just doing a job, if that makes sense. But
yeah,
the way you turn around and say, "I am a trainer," um, you're then putting this. There's this cognitive dissonance. There's a difference between who you think you are and the skills that you're portraying. And your natural tendency is to actually expand your skills to accommodate your identity. If that makes sense. Yeah. Can I give you a, a, a bigger example of some of the issues that are around this?
yeah, brilliant.
So for many years before I accidentally wrote a book, lots of people had encouraged me to write a book, and I had always said, I can't. I don't know how. I don't think I have all the. I don't think I have the momentum. I don't think I have the knowledge. I don't have all this. I don't know. It's a whole bunch of excuses. Okay, and all of it was patently not true. I mean, by the time people were encouraging me to write a book, I was already very skilled as a trainer. Part of being a trainer is to be able to develop course material, you know, and I was very good at it. So if I'd actually looked at my previous volumes of work, I'd written massives of course material. You just put it all together and call it a book. It would be, it's a book, you know.
Yeah,
But because I didn't have that identity, because I didn't think about it in that kind of on that kind of level, I the belief I had running was that I couldn't write books. Okay, and I firmly believe that if I'd known that I was writing a book when I started, I wouldn't have finished it.
yeah, yeah.
You know, because all of those beliefs and all that, that would have just totally got in the way. Now,
I call these identity constraints, and I call them, so I believe in this idea of we've got a lot of chaos going on in our head. We lead, in order to create something, we need to go through constraints, but we also have constraints put upon us, and constraints that we put upon ourselves. And an identity constraint, as your this identity thing, is I'm not able to do that. I feel a failure, or I'm an imposter. I think that identity constraint is what stops lots of people from creating, from getting to that creation stage.
absolutely, completely agree with you. You see, I mean, the bizarre thing is, like, once I'd done the first one, and again, it took someone else pointing out the fact that I'd done it for me to realise that I'd done it. But as soon as I'd done that, the bubble popped, and I kind of went, "Oh wow, I really have written a book." And oh, guess what? I've written so much on the website. I've got another book. Oh, and guess what? I've created so many courses on so many different things. Each one of those is a book. You know,
Yeah,
so I kind of went from not believing that I could be an author to, as soon as I'd realised that I was, um, the only thing that was stopping me was actually the physical time of doing all the tippity-tappeting of typing it out.
So you actually saw yourself in a different light by changing your that identity. That you saw yourself and the work you'd already done in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a very instantaneous thing. I can tell you exactly what it was when we first saw the book on Amazon.
Yeah.
And it had my name on it, and I was just going like that, you know, because I had both. It was that point where I had both identities struggling. You know, I had the old one going, I'm not an author, and then a new one looking at this book going, that's your name on that.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, so I actually remember that struggle, and I remember not being able to sleep that night because I was just sat there going, I've actually written all of these books. I just need to get them out of my fingers, and they're there, you know.
Okay, that leads me on to my second question, which is this tippity-tappity. It's like you've got all this content, you've got all these ideas, and then you've got this constraint of there's only so many hours in the day. And you mentioned it earlier, that finding, you know, maybe, I don't know how you want to call it, but outsourcing, finding an expert, finding somebody that you can delegate responsibility to take that information. How do you manage that? Because lots of people are afraid to delegate. How do you do that? How do you move things through your process?
Okay. Well, sorry, the short answer is I haven't. But let me flip that let me flip that around for a moment. I don't. Whilst I'm saying that from a standpoint that I haven't actually done it yet, I don't feel that that's kind of like a challenge. I'll tell you why. I mean, part of it's the backstop of having experience of how you know, managing and leading teams.
Yeah.
I don't see it as anything different from that. The thing that I have noticed is watching other people is that, and I think this will be the biggest issue for me, is actually letting go of my baby. Do you know what I mean? I've got a very solid idea of how I would want it done.
Yeah.
And the reality is that if it's a creative process, then the chances of me having it done the way that I want it done is not going to happen.
Yeah.
So what I'm looking for then is a collaboration. I want to, when I do that sort of stuff, what I want to do, let me explain the other one first. If it isn't a creative process, if it is just a system, that's easy. I'm good at writing systems and putting those constraints on, and you just give it to someone and go, that's what I want you to do, and you just need to you know, check it as they go through that. It needs to be very clear, concise instructions, you know. But if it's a creative process, I've got a mate who's a script writer at the moment, and I'm watching him go through this process because he's writing these. They're only 5-10 minute scripts, and they're going off to be workshopped. And then there's a director and actors, and a couple of them have now been produced. So there's a producer involved. And it's painful watching him actually have to separate from his product to it becoming a collaborative thing. And what's created out of that is something that's different and way bigger than the original just script. So again, what I'd be looking for in all of this is to take on someone that has something to contribute themselves. Now, I don't necessarily know what that is now. It might be that they're specialists in the same subject, or it might be that they're just a good editor, you know, for example. But whatever it is, I'm looking for people that are going to put their own creativity in it, and I will stand back from that to allow them for them to do the process. The difficulty is actually going to be to going back and looking at it as if it's and actually being objective enough to say, well, has that made it better?
Yeah, yeah. And you called it the pain of watching, for your scriptwriter friend, the pain of that that collaboration, changing it beyond. And is it better? That's the, you know, how do you work that out? How are you going to do that?
to be honest, I think I'm going to need to remove myself from the process. I think that decision is actually probably better made by someone else. I've seen this with my scriptwriter friend, that some of it, some of the stuff that's come out is enormously better than the original script. The scripts were good to start with, that's why they're doing it, but actually they've added so much more to it. There's a couple where, and I'm tracking on my own experience rather than my friends, in that I looked at the script and I saw it a certain way, and then I've seen what's come out, and I go, actually, do you know, I wouldn't have done that with it. To be fair to my friend, for the most part, he's gone, actually, that I'd never thought about it that way, and it's quite clever, it's quite neat. He said a couple of times, he said, well, I wouldn't have done that, you know. So I can see that there's places where it's I'm not entirely convinced, but most of the time it's been, we've not had one where either of us have gone, no, that's awful, or, you know, or anything like that. We've both gone through, well, that's, you know, I'm not convinced that I would have done that with it, but it's, but I think the bottom line of that is that you, as a creator, you're not actually creating. I am creating and I am writing for myself, but actually it's there is a purpose to this, and that's about your audience. So, you know, maybe it needs to be a choice or a decision from there. Again, this is something I will be looking at in the future. Is about having, you know, beta testers and test audiences, and having readers, and making. In fact, if I jump ahead, this is something that I'm. One of the things that was really, really good when we did it, when I didn't realise I was writing a book, was that because it's coming out as a 10-week course, and I was only a week ahead of the people that were reading it at times, it did two things. One, the fear of making sure I got the next bit done. I mean, there's a huge amount of motivation knowing that you're a week behind, you know, in front of 2,000 people that are screening for the next bit. But also, what it meant was that you can incorporate all the feedback. And I was thriving on that. I was loving every minute of that, you know, where people were saying, well, you didn't talk about this, you haven't done that bit, or I didn't understand this, and you could, you know, so the whole thing was evolving as we went. And I really want to replicate that. I'm not quite sure of the mechanisms for doing it. I think Patreon might be one method for doing that sort of stuff. Or if I've got I'd love to have a bunch of beta readers who are that I don't give the finished book to, but I actually give them it chapter at a time as I'm reading it, and then evolve the whole thing as you go.
I love this idea of, I'm rephrasing it now, is this just-in-time creation. So rather than create and give it like as a gift, I've made this for you, just-in-time creation, so that you can continually bring that feedback in and go through the process much faster. And that is really good, because when you know who the audience is, that's how you can make sure that that it's fit for purpose. You know, is the thing I'm creating fit for the purpose it needs to achieve?
Yeah, absolutely, Deb. So, this is coming from, for me, it's coming from, I'm a trainer, you know, that, so, and if you like, for me, there's two parts to this whole training thing, if I oversimplify it. There's the actual lesson design and the creation of the actual course, and about what you're trying to get across to your delegates, to your audience, whatever. There's one side that's about that, and that's okay. I can walk into a classroom with all of that, but actually it doesn't mean anything if it doesn't go into the heads of your audience. And I think where a trainer actually really properly adds value. You see, if I look at you know, if it's just about the content, well, once I've designed the course, I could just give it to them and let them read it, you know, and that's the end of it. But where I think a trainer adds value is actually taking that class and those people, and actually taking the content and making it match their needs. Now, I'm very good at doing that in a live environment, but it requires feedback to do it. And I think if I'm writing material that's for is the that direct feedback, I really kind of want them to be able to see or hear and be able to respond to what I'm saying, so I know that they get it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it really does. And I think the feedback process depends on where you want to use it, but the feedback process can make the product, the thing, the creation multiple times better than it could possibly be without that feedback. I call it a minimum valuable asset. So you create something that's the minimum it can be, that's valuable for the reader, and that is an asset to you. I think having that feedback and getting feedback loops going through the process and designing feedback into your process, into your creative system, I think is, I don't think you can do it without feedback. And not create something that people really need and love.
Yeah.
Go tell us now, because so you created this 10-week course, you gave so much stuff and value away for free. Your friend identified that you'd already written the equivalent of a book. You went through the process of turning that into a book. How did you become a bestseller? What happened next?
Yeah, this was all just a catalogue of accidents, beginning to end. So we packaged it all up and put it all together. By that time, the list was maybe 5,000 or 6,000 strong, because it doesn't sound like a huge list, but it was massively responsive, because I was constantly talking to them, and it was a subject that's that seriously mattered to them. So the short answer was it was actually quite simple, but it was really kind of an accident. I was very honest with them, and I didn't actually expect any of them to buy it. But when we launched it, so for weeks beforehand, I said, look, I was saying to them, look, we're launching the book on Amazon, but I don't want you to go and buy it until this one particular day. But please note, it only has a few little bits extra than what you've already had. I mean, I totally understand if you don't want to buy it, but I would like, I'd like a review, I'd like this, I'd like that, all on that one particular day. And if you do buy it, here's what I'm going to do, because I've got all this bonus stuff packaged up ready for you. So I think I built some audio and video stuff that just takes things that are in the book and expands them a bit further. And this is kind of what I mean about the idea about giving stuff away. I don't mind. I mean, if I've got everything that's in the book, there's all sorts of stuff that you can add on to that.
Yeah.
That could easily be another book and something else, or it can be another giveaway for buying the book, sign you up onto a different list. So that's kind of what we did. I had no idea how many people were actually going to go and buy the book all on that day. I'm still surprised that happened.
Yeah, yeah, it was a phenomenal success. And I think, I just want to reflect back to you, I think that it was so successful because of your integrity with the group. So you were honest with them, you told them what you were doing, you told them what they were getting, you told them that the vast majority of the content they'd already read. And that honesty and integrity, you actually had created a group of people who were real, true fans and followers of you, and that loved they devoured everything you said and provided.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Do you know, this actually kind of gets me about a lot of marketers. I don't know how many of those kind of instant creation products you've seen. The ones that really get me are the ones that they scrape public content off the internet and automatically collate them together, and then you can just throw it out as a book. Without naming any names, I've seen ones where I've been on a webinar where in the space of an hour they've collated public domain content from all sorts of different places, slapped it together in a book, and uploaded it onto Amazon.
Yep.
To my mind, the problem with all of that is that the relationship you're creating with your customer is awful.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you might make, you know, $5 on a book that no one is ever going to read any of your stuff again, and they're on this constant trawl of if you like scamming people, more or less. That's how they might say it differently and see it differently, but to my mind, that's actually what it is. There's no real value in it.
And the difference between what you did is you created an audience, you created what they needed, and then every time you created anything new, your audience bought it up and wanted it. Whereas these scammers, every time they have to create a new audience because they've damaged the trust, they've damaged the relationship. And the hardest bit, in my opinion, is creating that following, is creating the people who are interested in what you've got to say. So if you damage that trust every single time, you've got to start again from zero. So I much prefer your route. Yeah,
and to be honest, I don't know. I suppose again, it's an identity thing. I don't think it's any effort at all, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's stuff that I enjoy doing. It's there's a real boost in helping people. You know, I mean, when people send me emails about how I've helped with this, that, and the other, or they've got a new job, or you know, and this sort of stuff. It makes me feel good. It creates a drive and a motivation to actually do more of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I was doing a fair bit of this in that. So I start off with a book. So, you know, $5-10, it's a low value thing. And go through several different stages that lead up to face-to-face courses that are hugely expensive, you know.
Yeah.
Now the reality is that not everyone wants all of that, and not everyone can afford all of that, and so on and so forth. But if you've got that kind of funnel, people will progress up it because they see the value in what you're doing. And the reality is that the people at the high end, those high value clients, are just absolutely brilliant because they've been through everything else of yours, and they're still with you because they, you know, and they're paying even more money to be with you because they see the value of you. I mean, that's massive.
Yeah. And the word you use there as well is, if you, however you think of it, as a pipeline, a funnel, whatever it is, but if you add value at every stage, then that's the genius. You know, giving stuff away, that was adding value. Then you turn that into a book, that was adding value. It gave them a different way of reading it, and you gave them the bonuses. Then you added value with the relationship, with your constant communication, regular extra information. You added value when you created courses specifically for them because you were listening to what they were saying and what their problems were. And I think that adding value at every step in the process is what leads people to the top of funnels, not brilliant sales pages necessarily, not, you know, it's the value all the way through that process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Building relationships. I'm going to change tack as I'm like that. If you could go back and give yourself some feedback, what would you tell yourself from 10 or how long ago was this anyway? It was about 15 years ago, wasn't it? I mean, like, when are we talking about? I can't remember.
Yeah,
it's giving away our ages.
Yeah, it's about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you could give your 10 years ago self some advice, what would you have told him?
That's an interesting one. I think probably what I'd want to tell myself is to actually just get on and do it. I mean, it's the doubts and the lack of belief that was always the issue, and it's about having faith in yourself. Okay, so here's the thing. all of that was created from nothing. And what stopped it happening earlier was a belief that I couldn't do it. But the reality is, when I started, I had no idea of what I was doing. It just happened. Now, since then, it's easier for me to do those things because I've now already done it, and I know I can do it. Okay, but there's so many things that I haven't done, and I'm not that I know that I can do, even though I've never done them.
Yeah.
You know, so and there's a lot of it that I don't know now how to do, but I have enough confidence to say that I'll find a way. For me, again, now I'm starting to come a little bit more into my own about this identity statement about being I am a creator. I used to. It's actually a fairly recent change in the way that I in my identity and my belief. I used to, in fact, I still do see myself as a problem solver. You know, I'm great at finding solutions to things. The good side of that is that you can't. I mean, you can phase me, but you can't stop me. You know, if you give me a problem, I will worry my way around it, or through it, or over it, or under it. I will find a way.
Yeah.
But the downside of it is you have to have a problem to start with.
So you see everything as a problem.
Yeah. Or if I don't have a problem, I don't do anything.
Oh,
you know?
Even worse.
Yeah. So that's the issue with the problem solver end of it. But what I've come to see myself as is the flip side of that, is that I'm a creator. I create stuff, which is that, you know, if you like, the forward-looking part of that. It's taken a while for me to get there. A lot of it has come from writing. In that, right from writing that book, I became an author. But from then to I've started going, well, I'm not just an author. I create stuff, whether it's systems or processes, whether it's you know, like that process for creating 70 articles in a day, and that sort of stuff. I could have seen that as well. Actually, at the time we did it, I did see it as a problem. It was an intellectual challenge to go, right. Do you remember that story?
Tell us about creating 7. No, tell us now, because I think this is fascinating. Go for it.
Okay, so I was talking to Joe, and he wanted some marketing articles to market the book, and I said, well, how many? And he laughingly said, well, as many as you can give us. And I said, well, is that 50? Is it 130? Is it how many? And he just said 70. And I said, well, so I turned around and went, okay, I'll have them with you for tomorrow.
Confident.
No, I was joking as well. I would go, right, yeah, 70. Goes, okay, right. So I finished the call and I went, well, I mean, I've said it now. I mean, Joe knows I was messing about. I know I'm messing about. But I wonder if you could. So I spent the rest of the day working out how I might do that. And it was actually really straightforward when I'd actually started thinking about this from a process perspective. Okay, so what's marketing articles that highlight the book? Okay, so for different markets. So I went, right, okay, well, let me take a process that's in the book. Let me take a language pattern or something that's in the book that I can apply to lots of different things. So I got that's there. Now I went, right, okay, well, if I can apply it to lots and lots of things, then all I need are those 70 markets or those 70 people that it would apply to. And then all I need to do is fix at the front and the back, the front end, that context. So that person reading that article would go, this is how this will apply to me. And at the end part, put in well, now go off and do something about it. And this is what you could expect to get. So now I'm just topping and tailing that article, or with a thing in the middle. So now it is just a process. So actually, most of that, most of the day was nothing more than looking for 70 people that process was appropriate to. I literally, it turns into a fill in the blanks thing. So if you put all the articles side by side, you know that they're all the same, But the reality of that, though, is any individual that particular article is aimed at will see it as unique to them, So there's two sides to that. At the time I was doing it, I was a problem solver and I was a writer, okay? But now I look at it and go, actually, look, I really am a creator, because what I've done is I've created a process for doing a specific thing. And even more than that, I'm now going, right, okay, so how else could I use that process as a solution to other things? That's another level of creativity above that. Does that kind of make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. And I love this idea of creating processes, because I'm an engineer, so my whole life, I'm a very creative person, but my whole life thinks about systems and processes and how can I organize that and arrange that, and what are the inputs, what are the outputs, what happens in the middle. So I think in systems and processes, and I love the idea of topping and tailing an article that would then create multiple articles, because, as you said, each individual who has a problem and finds the article will find their unique version of the 70 articles. But then the cherry on your cake then is, how do you use that process for other processes? And it ties back to what you said earlier, which is you can outsource or delegate if you put it into a process. So now you can not only be creative, you can actually be hugely creative and create a lot of things quite quickly, because you've created a process to manage that creation. So talk to me about that. So how have you reused that process that you came up with?
To be honest, it winds up. It depends on what level you look at this at, because a lot of it is a conceptual thing. Okay, so I'm going a fair way into starting to write fiction. Well, I haven't yet, but I'm going to. It's already happened. So I've actually started analysing a lot of authors. Now, I don't want to speak ill of him. I don't mean this as but one of my most favourite authors is Terry Pratchett.
Yep.
And he's, I'm fairly sure he writes faster than I can read, or wrote faster than I could read. At the time when he was coming up with a lot of the Discworld stuff, I was going I couldn't keep up with him,
Yeah, me too.
But the reality is, it's all formula.
Yeah.
Now, and I don't say that in a bad way, because even the worst of his books, I like the formula.
Yeah.
There is a there's not a book that there's not a Discworld that he's written that I haven't liked. There have been some that I like enormously, and there are some that I don't like as much. Okay? Even at his worst, I like the formula. But at his best, they are utterly brilliant, even though it's a formula. So my point here is that he's actually done exactly the same thing as I'm doing with an article. He's topped and tailed it for a specific type of person with a specific kind of reader interest. So, hey ho, all the Sergeant Vimes stuff and Guards and the Watchmen and all of that. I'm an ex-copper. I love it, and that's why I love it. It's as straightforward as that. The Mort and the whole death stuff, that really speaks to me. I'm not a huge fan of Granny Weatherwax and the witches and stuff. I still like them, and I still have enjoyed reading them, but they're not my books. Whereas Guards is and Mort is that but actually, when you deconstruct the whole thing, it's a formula. He's just topped and tailed it. So I'm starting to see, and there's a couple of other authors that I'm starting to analyse in that kind of way. they're nowhere near as famous as Terry Pratchett, but they do a very similar kind of thing. Whereas Terry Pratchett created a world and then he populated it with those characters and created the stories out of that, there are others that create series of books that are all about the same group of people, if you like.
Yep.
There's a guy called Steve Higgs who again is writing faster than I can read, and there's one series of characters he's created that they just remind me of Scooby-Doo. You know, it's the Scooby Gang in a different context. And again, I love them because they just remind me of Scooby-Doo, you know?
Yeah. So where are you leading with this now? So where are you going with this idea of writing fiction? Because what are you planning on doing?
Well, I want to create a whole bunch of fiction. I've got a couple of series books in my head. Again, actually, I don't know how famous he is for people these days, but Jim Butcher and Harry Dresden. No,
I'm
okay.
not sure, but
he created it's all urban fiction. It's about a wizard private eye in Chicago. He's actually quite big, and I think he's just about to release book 17.
Wow.
And it charts the guy's history from where he starts as a private investigator, and he's a magician as well, but a very underpowered magician, all the way through. Now we're into book 17, where he's now a knight of the fairy court. He's been dead twice, and you know he's an exceptionally powerful being in his own world, and you're kind of part of his life, you know.
So you can see his growth and the arc of the character growing and literally taking on more skills and more abilities. Yeah.
There's a whole change in development in him, but each book you can read independently. You know, they don't have to be. You don't have to read them in order. You don't have to read them as a series. And I really, really like that idea. So I've got the idea of a couple of characters in various settings and actually looking at them right the way through the whole period of their life.
Yeah.
So I've already got that, and I haven't got the formula yet because I think I need to write the book to have that formula properly set down. So I've got those in my head. Well, sorry, I've got two of those in my head in two different kind of contexts. If I come back to the non-fiction world, the thing that happened to me with that first book is it gave me the model or the formula for writing others for other books. So I've got a few more to write, and they all will follow the model of the book. I'd like it to actually follow what happened with that book, in the, you know, the feedback loops and people being involved and modifying the content as we go based on the feedback from it and stuff. So it works in fiction and non-fiction, and here's me confidently saying that without ever having written a fiction novel.
Because you're able to now extrapolate from having the experience once. You're now able to extrapolate the formula and then to almost predict the outcome and the success, because if you do the same steps, you can almost predict.
Yeah.
I love that idea. That's the best thing. That's the beauty of processes and systems. That, you know, stick stuff in, go through the process, the right things pop out at the end. So yeah, I love that idea.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, we could. For me, it goes in two directions. There's one about the granular detail of it, and so we could actually just create the next book, do it replicating exactly the process that we used last time, and it would work.
Yeah.
I have no doubt about that, and that's fine. That that, if you like, is partly my old problem solver kind of mentality towards this. Is a like, it's just a thing to overcome. We can do that. There's a conceptual element to it, which is where the way I think now in terms of creation is, how else can I apply that to something else?
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily mean taking the granular detail of it, but conceptually, I'm doing exactly the same thing. You know,
Yeah.
It's chunk above.
Yeah.
And that, I don't necessarily know that it would work in exactly the same way as it did the first time, but what I do know is that it will work on some level or other, and I'm creative enough to tweak it once it has, to make it work the way that it should in that market or that context or
Brilliant.
or whatever. Yeah, you know, that's
yeah. So it's an iterative approach as well, because you're actually, as you're building the machine, as you're going through the process for the next time and the next time and the next time, you're building the machine even better each time. And I think some processes as well do have a decay element to them. So they might have worked perfectly once. Now maybe an element doesn't work so well. So how do you update that element? Or so it's that constant iteration and seeing what's happening and responding to the signals that you see.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It's it's an interesting it's an interesting point, because I come from an engineering background as well, so and that's obviously where some of this, you know, a lot of this is coming from. One of the things that I noticed that changed in me from being at university and studying this sort of stuff to being out in the real world and actually doing stuff with it, is that in university my idea was like the processes and systems and that were kind of like frozen in place. They were static things. Once you created them, that was it. Whereas as soon as you're out in industry, you know, actually this is a live thing. You know, it's constantly evolving and changing and growing and responding to its environment. And that's as an engineer, that's, you need to be part of that. You can't just make it and expect it to continue that way forever.
Yeah.
Because the rest of the world changes.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. I love it.
To.
Okay, I'm going to start closing us down a little bit, I'm afraid.
Sure.
Though I'm probably going to invite you back and we'll talk about some other things in the future. Okay, so my favourite question in the world at the moment, and I keep asking everybody this, I'm driving people mad, but I'm going to ask you anyway. When was the last time you did something for the first time?
I've got lots of different answers to that, but let me give you the most simple for the minute. Okay. I'm a massive role player. I love playing role-playing games, you know, D&D and all that sort of stuff. So I have been anti doing this stuff online. I prefer being face-to-face, and we've had, you know, so I have several role-playing groups in Glasgow, and we used to meet on a regular basis, and then COVID-19 came down, and so that's cut all of that out. Yeah. So we've gone all online running games. I didn't like the idea, but it was either that or not. And I'm finding actually I quite enjoy it. I don't think I think I'm always going to have. I think I prefer playing face to face, but I play these games really for a social element. There's a lot of before and after, and you know, stuff that and crosstalk across tables and everything that you're not going to get online. But what I'm finding online is, like, it's easier to set up games. It's easier to appear. There's so one particular group that we play regularly. We used to play regularly in the physical world. I don't think we're going to go back to that, or at least not for a long time, because a couple of people in the group are vulnerable, so they're going to be shielding for a lot longer than the rest of us. And another member of the group has just had their first daughter, you know, now, and they can still play, you know, whereas physically going somewhere to play the game
Yeah.
would be cool. And of course, if you've got a young child in the house, having 4 or 5 other people turn up and making lots of noise, just at the point where they're putting the baby to bed, is probably not the best thing. Whereas online it works fine.
Yeah.
Sorry, but in terms of actually playing, both as a games master and as a role player, it takes a certain there's a certain etiquette. There's a different way of playing, because you need to give people space and time, and not overtalk each other the way that you might. And, there's that sort of stuff. But for me, particularly as a GM storyteller, I'm taking all. One of the reasons why I'm actually pretty good at being a GM is because I'm a hypnotist, because I am a storyteller, because I use language in particular ways around the table. I'm relearning all of that stuff for an online game, which is quite interesting.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting that the pandemic kind of forced you into doing something that you weren't keen on doing in the first place.
Yeah, and again, I haven't done this yet, but it's opened up a whole set of new doors. You see, like I've got a few people that I used to play with, 10, 15 years ago, that moved away from Glasgow. I dearly love, and we've not played for a long, long time because they're not here anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm just going, well, why don't we play online? We can connect each other. One of them's now in America. There's a couple actually in Norfolk now. So, and why not? There's no reason not to. And it just occurred to me, a few weeks ago, that the only thing that was stopping that happening was the fact that I was going, I don't think I like playing online, and never tried it. It's a daft thing,
Yeah.
So that's if you're after the last thing I really did new, it's that.
Yeah.
But then there's a lot of things that I'm kind of doing new, mainly centered around sort of like my parents and of the last few years.
What are you going to be working on next? Talk to us about what's happening for you next. What's your next big creation that we can look out for?
Okay, this should because of all the stuff that's happened to me over the last 5 years that centers around my parents. I was using a lot of that and writing it all up on Facebook. Okay.
To entertain me hugely. I mean, I've enjoyed following you. You're perhaps the only person on Facebook who I actively look for every single morning. Sorry, family and friends, but Rintu is the person I look for first every morning. Is tell me another installment in the crazy life of Rintu.
Yeah. So lots of people have been asking me to write that up, and so I have been. I mean, for the last couple of months, I've been working quite hard at putting all the Facebook posts together, collating them, and found I haven't quite got enough. And then when I start thinking about this is I went through quite a thought process about it. I decided that it's 5 years worth of interesting stuff. There's quite a lot of memoirs and ups and downs, and it's been quite funny and all that sort of stuff. So I wanted to write it from the perspective of Facebook posts. So it is just my life from on Facebook. I'm taking out all the political stuff and all the sweary bits and all that, but focusing it down a little bit more. But then so I've been reading a lot of stuff about how about writing memoirs and how you do all that, those sorts of things. And one of the biggest things that I've caught from it all is that the best memoirs are actually proper stories.
Yeah.
And that took me to this place where I go, like, actually, this is a real challenge. I've got to write more material because there's actually not enough Facebook posts to do it, and there's bits. Because I was writing it up on social media, there's things that you don't put on social media. There's stuff, and because you only see one thing every few days, it doesn't actually tell a connected story.
Yeah.
So I need to put some more to connect all the dots and make sure that the reader actually sees what they see. But the thing that I suddenly it popped into my head a few weeks ago was like, if I'm doing all of that and I need to make it into a proper story, then maybe I need to use story templates and proper plotting and the hero's journey. And it's kind of like uh, a reverse issue from a normal author, in that normally an author would go and plot stuff to make it work. Now what I've got is I've actually got all the content.
Yeah.
I need to work out how to present that so that it's still real, but turn it into a plot that does what a plot does,
Yeah.
or has a character. It was, and this should have been my answer to what I've been doing differently. Okay, so what I've actually had to do is separate myself from myself and go, the character of me in this story, what's their theme? What have they developed? What was the challenge they overcame? And I've actually had to look at myself as a character within this story and ask kind of the questions that you would ask about a character.
Your motivation and where's your arc and where are you on the journey right now? Oh my gosh, that's really cool.
How's he changed as a result of what he's gone through? And so there's part of me that wants to also write this up. And again, this is the creation end of it. I want to write this up as a personal development process, because I'm not sure that I've changed. I've changed my perspective of me by doing that.
Wow.
I am different through looking at myself in that kind of way. And I think one of the things I'm struggling with with this as a book is like, it's a different audience. It's not my normal NLP personal development thing. And how do I draw them in as well? And I'm thinking one of the bonuses for this is actually going to be, if you're interested in personal development and NLP and all those sorts of things. So log on here and you get, and I will give you the things that have actually happened to me as a result of using the processes that aren't, properly written up in the book.
So you're adding like layers and layers and layers of X. So there'll be the story layer, and then you can have the NLP layer. So you can deconstruct fantastic. So that's value at different, like in a matrix of value.
Yeah, and it applies to, if you like, different audiences now. So I mean, there's people that are just going to buy this for the story.
Yeah.
There are people that may well buy it because of the NLP behind the story. So it is on different levels. I mean, I always had planned to put some of the NLP stuff in there. I mean, I did a lot of pain relief and hypnosis kind of work with my mum. I actually tried a lot of that with my dad, but spectacularly couldn't.
Well, your dad is oh my gosh, yeah, your dad.
But so I was planning to put some of that in there, but quite light touch, because I don't want to burden a reader that's going for the story just with the technical end of this. And it only occurred to me a couple of weeks ago when I was thinking about the change that's happened to me as a result of thinking myself as a character in that story.
Yeah.
That's actually a whole level and volume of material that's worth writing up that way.
I think you're absolutely right. The personal development side of writing a memoir, even if nobody ever reads it. I had a midlife crisis about 6 years ago. I just threw my life into the air and got divorced. I mean, like, everything changed. And writing it down as it was going along, even though it was only for me, actually helped me understand myself better. And I could see myself on the journey, and knowing the hero's journey and knowing the arc of the hero's journey, it gave me hope that I knew that soon I would come out of the other end. I would be a different person, that I didn't have to panic right now, that I didn't have to worry right now, that it was just a journey, and it took all the pain out. But that was through the writing process and that internal thinking it through rather than panicking it through.
Yes, I love that. I mean, that's actually a lot of what I've done over the years, literally on Facebook. There's part of it. I'll tell you what. Again, it's about solutions to issues. When my mum was diagnosed with cancer, one of the things that I wanted to do was keep everyone updated as to where we were with it. From, you know, I've got a lot of very well-meaning but nosy family that want to know the ins and outs of everything. And very early on, I was getting really fed up writing the same thing to them again and again and again. You know, so I said to them all, I'm going to put it all on Facebook. I put it all. I mean, obviously, I had my mum's permission to do that. I said I was going to put it all on Facebook so that you can just go and look. You know, you don't have to keep coming to me. And then the first thing that occurred to me with that was, well, actually, if I just write out what's happening, it's real dull reading, and it's quite emotive, and it's not pleasant reading. I'm not sure that I even want to share that, you know. So I got into that thing of going, well, how do I make this interesting? How do I make it funny? How do I change this so that engage people in it, rather than just, you know, we went to the doctor and he gave us bad news, which is effectively what a lot of it was. And so that's kind of what, again, a flip side. At the time that I started doing it, I didn't realize that this would happen. But by the fact that I'd forced myself into a position where I'm trying to make this interesting or engaging or funny and all of that, it forced me into looking at everything from a completely different perspective. And it really, really saved me. I mean, that's where a lot of my resilience has come from.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I can understand. And I think you probably saved your family as well. And you certainly entertained your friends. You know, your stories, you have a wonderful way of looking at the world and bringing out the uniqueness in every single person in every single event. You know, I am fascinated by your writing style and fascinated by your life. You know, I love how you're able to do that. And what I'd like to do now, though, is I'd like us to close down, but in the next episode, because I think we should do another one in a couple of weeks' time, I want to talk more about the hero's journey, and I want to talk more about because lots of people are interested in that and using it for arcs, and I'm using it with some people to write their non-fiction books using the hero's journey. So I would love to talk for us to have a conversation about hero's journey and where we both, you know, these cycles of the hero's journey. So let's save that for the next time. But for right now, how can people get in touch with you? How can they follow you on Facebook? How can they buy your book? How do you want them to contact you?
Okay. Buying the book's easy. Just go to Amazon, buy it. I think I've given you a link, haven't I?
I'll put the link in the comments. Yep.
So that's the easiest way to get hold of anything like that. On Facebook, all you just need to do is search for me on Facebook. Actually, I'm on. So I've got Facebook pages for the Persuasion Skills Black Book, for Rintu Basu, and there was a third one, but those two are probably the primary ones that I use. I am on Twitter. The handle's Persuasion Skills. But I'm not on Twitter at the moment. I haven't. The accounts are still active, but I don't tweet. I haven't for 5 years almost, because I had to focus on one place, and the one that I chose was Facebook. So, but I will be going back in the next few months. So, you find them there. Eventually, the website will come back. But if you find me on Facebook, I'll tell you when the website's back up.
Brilliant. Okay. So, Rintu, thank you so much for your time, and let's definitely put a date in for talking about the hero's journey.